Today we're looking at the Boat Valvryn. It's an F1 style tunnel hull, and it was discontinued in 2019, maybe 2020. So I've made some videos of the boat running, showed a couple of the upgrades I did, but today I'm going to go in more detail on what I've done with the boat, since I've had to replace several components and have made a couple of upgrades. So as you can see on the table here, over on the right side are all the things I've had to replace. The servo just stopped working, so I replaced it. Very hard to find a replacement, so I ended up just getting the S615, so I just replaced it with the exact same Spectrum servo. The 30 amp Dynamite ESC that came with the boat, that burned out. I replaced that with a Hobby Wing Sea King 60 amp, and I'll show you how that fit into the boat. And then most recently, the bearings on the stock motor went bad on me, so I got new bearings, put them in, and I don't know what happened, but the bearing basically disintegrated. They were brand new Boca bearings. For whatever reason, it just died. So I am going to be replacing that with this Surpass Hobby 2845 3100 kV motor. The stock motor was 3000 kV. The only thing I need to do on this is, these are 3.5 millimeter bullet connectors, and the ESC is 4 millimeter. I have my 4 millimeter male bullet connectors. I'll just solder those onto the back of the motor and we'll be up and running. Those are all the things I've had to replace. Now, as far as upgrades, I upgraded the stock Outdrive. So the stock Outdrive is the black part. Everything on here except for, well, the motor mount and the servo mount, I replaced with the Dragon Hobby Outdrive. It's all aluminum. It just works better. So I replaced the whole unit. Like I said, when I got the Dragon Hobby unit, the motor mount that came with the Dragon Hobby is fit for a 29 millimeter motor, whereas the stock motor and the one I'm replacing it with are both 28 millimeter. And then the servo mount, because I'm using the stock servo, this didn't work, so I took that off. But when you buy the Dragon Hobby Outdrive, it comes with everything, including all your seals, all your bearings, everything to basically make this a straight drop in. So here's a little bit closer view. You can see, again, this is the stock Outdrive motor mount because it's 28 millimeter, and here you can see this is the servo that's mounted to the stock Outdrive servo mount. It just works significantly better than the stock Outdrive that came with the boat. So this is the Hobby Wing 60 amp ESC. Originally, the 30 amp ESC was mounted in here, and there was a little wall that went right down, pretty much right through the middle where the capacitors are today. So I had to grind that wall off. The 60 amp ESC mounted in there nice and neat. All I used was double stick tape and then mounted the receiver in front. So my big Roaring Top batteries fit pretty much right up tight to the edge of the receiver and takes up the whole space. Now, one thing you probably noticed is not straight walls of the hull. I got this boat used. I have no idea what happened to it and why this warps in here, especially so far. I tried using caulk to create a seal. That didn't work. So now I have to use hatch tape. The other thing I did is I put more styrofoam up into the bow. Probably the last upgrades I did was the stock roughly 33 millimeter plastic prop. It's a 1.4 pitch. Gets chewed up. You can probably see here, this is a prop is really beat up, and this is what it looks like brand new. So instead of the plastic prop, I tested and used two different props. This is a CNC 34 millimeter by 1.4 pitch, and then I've got a 34 millimeter by 1.4 pitch 3-blade prop. With the 2-blade prop, I'm consistently running 30-35 miles an hour. With the 3-blade, well, just before the prop shaft broke and I lost my first prop and part of my shaft in the lake, I had hit 37 miles an hour. So then I was testing the stock plastic prop, the nicer looking one, not the beat up one. And about 30 seconds into the run, the bearings on the motor froze up. So I'll probably be sticking with one of these two. If I can hit 37 miles an hour with a 3-blade prop, a 3-cell battery with, well, it was the stock motor, but now with 3100 kV motor, then I'll probably stick with that. Again, assuming that the temperatures are all in line with where they should be. We are outside about to pressure test this all rubber or silicone water jacket on the Valvryn. It's very, very bendy, but it fit, and we'll see if it seals around the motor. Make sure there's actually water flow going through here like it should. All right, here we go with the Valvryn. This is the new Surpass Hobby's 3100 kV motor. See how she goes. It's a little bit windy. That's full throttle. So after several minutes of trying to get the boat back to shore using our jet jam, I took temperatures, and the end bell on the motor is still hot. It's like 140 degrees. ESC was about 120. Battery is only like 80. If you look, as careful as I was trying to be, it pinched the water line. So I essentially had no cooling. So this water jacket's not going to work. I got to fix the other one. But we only hit 20 miles an hour. Here we are with what should be the final fix to get the Valvryn running again with the Surpass Hobby 2848 3100 kV motor. So originally, I was using this water jacket that is made for a 28 millimeter motor and didn't have any luck with it. I could not get this thing to fit. The O-rings that came with it, I destroyed trying to put on. And I've put on water jackets on other motors without any issue. You put a little oil on the O-ring, you put a little oil on the motor, you wiggle it a little bit, it goes right on. This, nothing doing. I even used a rubber mallet to try to get it on, which is why I destroyed the O-rings. So I ended up buying 5 different size O-rings. None of it would work. It's either too tight or too loose. So then I tried using this silicone water jacket. As you saw, because of the way the water inlets come out, I ended up actually pinching one of the water cooling lines and then overheated the motor in the ESC. So then I ended up trying the stock water cooling jacket on the Surpass Hobby motor. The difference between the water jacket that came with the Horizon Hobby motor versus this water jacket, the ID is actually a little bit bigger. I think it was like 1 or 2 tenths of a millimeter in diameter larger. So this had a little slop. You put it on the motor, you got a little wiggle without an O-ring, of course. The Horizon water jacket was actually almost tight without any O-ring. So I figured it would never work. Well, in my desperate attempt to get something to work for this, I ended up buying O-rings that were actually a little too small for the water jacket. So I did water test it, and this is what I used to pressure test, at least for this boat. So on the boats where the water exits, it has a tube sticking out. I get a little piece of silicone tubing and basically like a syringe. Usually these are like the ones you have your kids' medicine in. Just slip on the silicone. This end goes on here, and then I just take the garden hose, shoot it into the syringe. Water flows through the water cooling and out the actual pickup underneath, and it held. There was no water leaks around it. Water flowed really well, so I'm hopeful that this now has fixed my issues. One more thing I did actually to this Surpass Hobby motor is I shortened the motor shaft about 2 millimeters. I did that because when the flex cable was installed and the prop shaft was in, there was probably 6 to 8 millimeters of the prop shaft sticking out. And when you look between the dog bone and where the prop shaft itself ends is very short. And where the flex cable goes in, like they crimped it onto the flex cable. You don't have a very smooth shaft going into the bearing. So I wanted to get more of the prop shaft into the bearings. So I ended up shortening the motor shaft to get that flex cable in further. You always want to make sure with a flex cable, the distance from your drive dog to the strut is the same distance as the diameter, in this case 4 mil. So now I can actually do that. One more thing I want to point out on my Valvryn is that I no longer store the prop shaft and prop in the boat, even if it's only for a few days, especially if it's anything longer. I'll take it out, put some grease on the shaft and just stick it in a little Ziploc bag. The bend that happens inside here is pretty sharp, and I think that's potentially one of the things that contributed to my prop shaft breaking the last time. So now I just don't even store it. I store it, again, put a little grease on it, put it in a bag. When I'm ready to run, I'll pull it out of here, wipe off the grease it again so it's got fresh, clean grease. I'll install the prop shaft when I'm ready to go out and run, and then I take it out afterwards. All right, here we go again with the Valvryn. Hopefully the water cooling works this time. 3-cell battery, 2-blade prop. Uh-oh. We're back for what's now the third try to get the Valvryn running with the new motor. I have now had to switch to a Leopard 2848 3100 kV motor. When I did that, I had to get a new coupler, but now I think we're all set to go. After a few minutes of running, batteries 100, ESCs a little over 120. Back of the motor is about 120. Wires are about 100. About 100 on the plugs. A little hard to see, but 36 miles an hour. 36 miles an hour on our 2-blade CNC 34mm prop.